Studying life. Think about important news stories you've heard. Bird flu spreads around the world, killing birds and threatening human epidemic. Users of certain illegal drugs experience permanent damage to their brains and nervous systems. Reports surface about efforts to clone human cells. These and many other stories involve biology, the science that employs scientific methodology and study living things. The Greek word bios means life and logy means study of. So what characteristics do all living things share? Living things are made up of basic units called cells, are based on universal genetic code, obtain and use materials and energy, grow and develop, reproduce, respond to their environment, maintain a stable internal environment, and change over time. Biology is the study of life, but what is life? No single characteristic is enough to describe a living thing. Also, some non-living things share one or more traits with organisms. Some things, such as viruses, exist at the border between organisms and non-living things. Despite these difficulties, we can list characteristics that most living things have in common. Both fish and coral, for example, show all the characteristics common to living things. Living things are based on universal genetic code. All organisms store the complex information they need to live, grow, and reproduce in a genetic code written in a molecule called DNA. That information is copied and passed from parent to offspring and is almost identical to every organism on Earth. Living things grow and develop. During development, a single fertilized egg divides again and again. All those cells divide, they differentiate, which means they begin to look different from one another and to perform different functions. Living things respond to their environment. A stimulus is a signal to which an organism responds. For example, some plants can produce unsavory chemicals to ward off caterpillars that feed on their leaves. Living things reproduce, which means they make new, similar organisms. Most plants and animals engage in sexual reproduction, in which cells from two parents unite to form the first cell of a new organism. Other organisms reproduce through asexual reproduction, in which a single organism produces offspring identical to itself. Beautiful blossoms are part of an apple tree's cycle of sexual reproduction. Living things maintain a relatively stable internal environment, even when external conditions change dramatically. All living organisms expend energy to keep conditions inside their cells within certain limits. This condition is called homeostasis. Unchanging, homeostasis. For example, specialized cells help leaves regulate gases that enter and leave the plant. Living things obtain and use material and energy to grow, develop, and reproduce. The combination of chemical reactions through which an organism builds up or breaks down materials is called metabolism. For example, leaves obtain energy from the sun and gases from the air. These materials have taken part in various metabolic reactions within the leaves. Living things are made up of one or more cells. The smallest units are considered fully alive. Cells can grow, respond to their surroundings, and reproduce. Despite their small size, cells are complex and highly organized. For example, a single branch of a tree contains millions of cells. Not a million, but millions. Over generations, groups of organisms evolve or change over time. Evolutionary change links all forms of life to a common origin of more than 3.5 billion years ago. Evidence of this shared history is found in all aspects of living and fossil organisms, from physical features to structures of proteins to sequences of information in DNA. If you don't know what all of this means just yet, that's okay. Relax, hang in there, hit that subscribe button, and you'll get there by the time we're through with this. For example, signs of one of the first land plants, Cooksonia, are preserved in rock over 400 million years old. So what are the central themes of biology? Biology revolves around several interlocking big ideas: the cellular basis of life, information and heredity, matter and energy, growth and development, and reproduction, homeostasis, evolution, structure and function, unity and diversity of life, interdependence in nature, and science as a way of knowing. All biological sciences are tied together by big ideas that overlap and interlock with one another. Several of these big ideas overlap with the characteristics of life or the nature of science. Living things are made up of cells. Many living things consist of only a single cell and are called unicellular organisms. Plants and animals are multicellular. Cells in multicellular organisms display many different sizes, shapes, and functions. Living things are based on a universal genetic code. The information coded in your DNA is similar to an organism that's lived 3.5 billion years ago. The DNA inside your cells right now can influence your future, your risk of getting cancer, the amount of cholesterol in your blood, and the color of your children's hair. And at the time of this recording, all of this stuff has been mapped out for future scientists to make sense of. It's called the Human Genome Project, and I think yesterday it was announced that it was completely finished. Yesterday, March 2022. That's where I am. Life requires matter that serves as nutrients to build body structures and energy that fuels life's processes. Some organisms, like plants, obtain energy from sunlight and take nutrients from air, water, and soil. Other organisms, including most animals, eat plants or other animals to obtain both nutrients and energy. The need for matter and energy link all living things on Earth in a web of interdependent relationships. All living things reproduce. Newly produced individuals grow and develop as they mature. During growth and development, generalized cells typically become more different and specialized for particular functions. Specialized cells build tissues like brains, muscles, and digestive organs that serve various functions. Living things maintain a relatively stable internal environment. Remember, that's homeostasis. For most organisms, any breakdown of homeostasis may have several serious or even fatal consequences. Specialized plant cells help leaves regulate gases that enter and leave the plant. Groups of living things evolve. Evolutionary change links all forms of life to a common origin more than 3.5 billion years ago. I know there's repeating, but that's to get these ideas cemented, hopefully further in your head. Evidence of this shared history is found in all aspects of living and fossil organisms, from physical features to structures of proteins to sequences of information in DNA. Evolutionary theory is the central organizing principle of all biological and biomedical sciences. Each major group of organisms has evolved on its own collection of structures that have evolved in ways that make particular functions possible. Organisms use structures that have evolved into different forms as species have adapted to life in different environments. Life takes on many forms, yet all living things are fundamentally similar at the molecular level. All organisms are composed of a common set of carbon-based molecules. They store information in a common genetic code and use proteins to build their structures and carry out their functions. Evolutionary theory helps explain this unity of life and its diversity.